Atlanta News First Plus starts now.
And breaking news out of Covington, this man now charged with murder and arson, accused of killing a neighbor and then setting the body on fire. Thanks for joining us on ANF Plus. I'm Maria Moreau, and this is Catch Up Quick. We're going to start with Atlanta News First, Don Shipman, who is out with the first alert breaking news tracker in Newton County near the Covington Police Headquarters with what we know so far about this investigation.
Us that they heard 7 gunshots in the middle of the night, then those flames. That's what kept them up. That's what brought police to their neighborhood, including a SWAT team. And you can see it right here, that police activity. This is on Westview Drive. Authorities responded to reports of shots fired, and when they arrived, they found something horrifying, a person dead inside a car that had been set on fire. And here's the thing, for the people who live on this street, this wasn't a crime story on TV or a podcast. It was happening right outside their windows. Police quickly identified a suspect, a neighbor, Owen Holmes, also known as Chip. For several hours, neighbors sat in fear as officers searched for him.
So it's, any other night, just randomly you hear 7 gunshots, which that's not the typical thing you'd hear in your residence. So it kind of like caught me off guard.
Police say Holmes was taken into custody without incident, and then we looked into it. A man with the same name was booked into the Newton County Jail right around 1:30 this morning, facing several charges, including murder and arson. Right now, we're working to find out the identity of the victim. We're here in Newton County.
All right, thanks, Don. And moving into this story, a woman has been sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison for a deadly shooting spree in Midtown Atlanta. A judge sentenced Raisa Kenye to 2 life sentences plus 50 years. Now, the jury found her guilty but mentally ill during the shootings in 2022 that led to the deaths of 2 men and injured a third. Prosecutors argued that Kenye targeted the men who worked at her apartment complex and workplace. Now, her attorneys say that she should have been found not guilty by reason of insanity. They are now promising to fight for a new trial. And this development into our newsroom this morning, Georgia Supreme Court has sent convicted murderer Hannah Payne's bid for a new trial back to a Clayton County judge, but it's not to weigh the legal merits. It is to rewrite an order that the court says was tainted by bogus and misused case citations apparently generated with AI. In an opinion authored by Justice Benjamin Land, the court said the assistant district attorney that was assigned to the case filed a response to Payne's motion for a new trial that cited, quote, non-existent cases and cases that do not stand for the proposition. The ruling doesn't change Hannah Payne's conviction yet, but it does force the trial court to redo its order, showing how flawed filings can derail high-stakes cases. Now, the ruling doesn't change Hannah Payne's conviction yet. It does, however, force the trial court to redo its orders, and it puts other trial judges on notice to scrutinize proposed orders, especially as AI becomes more and more common in legal drafting. So really unexpected and surprising news to come out of this story, which we had previously believed would be said and done with the sentencing, the trial, the cases of Hannah Payne continuing with this latest development. I want to talk about more court stories that we're following out of today. The Alpharetta man accused of scamming investors of nearly $1 million is scheduled to be sentenced. Matthew Neat pled guilty in federal court back in January. Atlanta News First Sarah Hammond reports from the Richard B. Russell Federal Building Courthouse on what we can expect out of today.
We're going to be inside of the courtroom as a judge is scheduled to sentence 43-year-old Matthew Neat a little later this morning. Neat pled guilty to defrauding at least 24 Georgia Bulldogs fans and other investors of nearly $1 million and used the money from these fake investments for his own purposes. Police arrested Neat in New Orleans on allegations that he sold fake tickets to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. Authorities say he claimed to have tickets for UGA football games against Alabama Alabama, Texas, and Mississippi, and other major sporting events, including the Masters. That's what Douglas Patterson told us in December he'd been promised back in 2017.
It was a shock. I mean, it was just, just complete shock. I just didn't see that in him. And from some of the other friends we had in common, I don't think they saw it either.
Neat also allegedly offered fake investment properties in Costa Rica, but again, he has pled guilty and is scheduled to be sentenced at 10 a.m. In Atlanta, Sarah Hammond, Atlanta News First.
All right, so, thank you so much, Sarah Hammond, for that report. Let's talk about Delta, because I feel like I gave them a shout out yesterday, and today I have some not so great news. The airline is getting ready to cut food service on hundreds of flights per day. The company says it will stop offering food and drinks to most passengers on flights that are less than 350 miles, so about 45 minutes long. The change goes into effect on May 19th. And for a lot of you, myself included, I have a flight at the end of May. I have a short flight I need to take, and I was devastated this morning when I opened my phone after waking up and saw that. It is definitely the little things that you look forward to when you get on a flight, food, drinks, just to relax and get into the mode of wherever your destination may carry you. So for those of you flying less than 350 miles, about 45 minutes, just prepare to maybe bring some water and your own snacks for your ride. Let's take things over to the state capitol, where Governor Kemp today is expected to sign an early learning bill. Now, this is an important one. This is a sweeping bill turned law today that supporters say could mean big changes in elementary schools across Georgia. Atlanta News First reporter Mary Kate Hamilton is at the Georgia State Capitol with what we can expect.
That's right. Many lawmakers may be celebrating later today because for many of them, this was a big priority this legislative session. The bill overhauls the state's literacy programs, focusing specifically on the youngest minds. That's kindergarten through third grade. Here's the biggest difference that parents could see: one full-time literacy coach per school. The bill would provide grants to reimburse schools the salary and benefits for those coaches in each school. It would also require those coaches to spend a minimum of 70% of their time in the classroom working directly on reading with students and teachers. Additionally, the bill updates dyslexia and screening requirements and steers districts toward reading instruction aligned with what they call the science of reading. The bill, titled the Georgia Early Literacy Act, places its emphasis on learning how to read at the earliest stages.
It fell to a level of 29% over this time period that we've been watching it. And that simply is not sufficient. I heard someone say just a few days ago that up until third grade, you learn how to read. And after third grade forward, you read to know how to learn.
The bill passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate back on March 31st. But again, it is not official until Governor Brian Kemp's signature. We do expect that later today, so we're keeping our eyes on it. Reporting from the Georgia State Capitol, Mary Kate Hamilton, Atlanta News First. I'll do bobble too.
All right, thanks so much, Mary Kate. And good news for you all. If you haven't heard, Georgia taxpayers, listen up. Special refunds have started rolling out. The State Department of Revenue says you should expect to see money coming into your account in the next coming weeks. The special tax refunds are part of a bill that has been signed by Governor Kemp back in March, citing a surplus in state funds. Now, what does that mean for your specific tax filing? Well, if you're a single filer, you could get up to $250. If you're the head of a household, you qualify for $375. And if you were a joint filer, if you're a married couple that filed together, you could see up to $500. You need to have filed taxes in Georgia for the last 2 years and not owe any outstanding taxes for those 2 years. We have more information for you on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, as well as links to where you can go get additional information on your specific case. So Excellent news there. I always want to end things on a good note, and our coverage continues here on Atlanta News First Plus. Here in a little bit, we are going to be talking with an entomologist about hantavirus. A recent outbreak of the rare infection took place on a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean, killing 3 people, including an elderly married couple, and sickening at least 3 others. The World Health Organization now looking into all of this as we continue to follow the situation, including those other passengers on board the cruise ship. We'll be right back after this short break.
Atlanta News First Plus starts now.
And thank you for joining us on Atlanta News First Plus. Health officials investigating a rare and potentially deadly hantavirus cluster tied to an international cruise ship voyage. Now, the World Health Organization says 3 passengers have died with additional suspected cases. Now, the ship's route included multiple remote ports all the way from Argentina toward the Canary Islands, and even a medical response unfolding in South Africa. A lot of news still developing as we're working to piece together these affected passengers, but to help us separate fear from facts, how hantavirus spreads and what symptoms matter, and what travelers should do as we start to get into those summer months, we're joined by board-certified entomologist Dr. Jim Fredericks. And Dr. Fredericks, you specialize in understanding these types of things. So my first question to you, hantavirus is a rodent-borne a virus. So what are the most plausible exposure scenarios we're talking about exposure happening on a cruise ship like this?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It feels unusual, this particular case. And I have to preface this entire thing with I'm not a physician, I'm an entomologist. And so my expertise is in pest control, including rodents and the rodents that carry hantavirus. In the US, you are typically going to have exposures through dust particles that have been contaminated with the infected urine of the deer mouse or the white-footed mouse, and sometimes also the cotton rat and the rice rat in the southeastern U.S. In South America, where it sounds like this has this originated, the rice rat is one of the most common vectors for this particular disease. The particular Andes strain, according to the CDC, is one of the few that actually is transmissible from person to person. So, so it could very well be that there has been person-to-person transmission after someone has contracted this from a rodent.
Can you talk to me about the typical incubation period? I mean, we're looking at this cruise ship, obviously, the expected length of time from onboard to onshore exposure.
Yeah. Again, that's a particular area that I'm not necessarily an expert in with regard to the disease aspects of hantavirus. But in terms of when people are exposed to the particles that have virus associated with them, dust particles, for instance, it could be as little as a few days to a week before symptoms might be seen.
What do you want people to keep in mind as far as sanitation, ventilation, things like that? You don't often expect your cruise ship to have rodents on board, but that is also something that comes with the territory.
Certainly. And when it comes to cruise ships, I think that, there is always the possibility that rodents have infested a cruise ship. Just like many other pests tend to find a way. At home, you can focus on, especially this time of year when people are getting out and maybe doing some spring cleaning in sheds or in the garage. These areas might very well have been infested with things like the white-footed mouse that can carry this disease. And so when you're doing some cleanup in there, don't use a leaf blower. Don't even use a broom if you find some droppings in these areas. It's good to use a bleach solution and then wipe or mop these things up. You definitely don't want to have airborne or aerosolized particles that you would breathe in, because that is the primary mode of picking up this particular virus.
Yeah, what do you think is the main, misconception that people have when they read a headline like this?
Well, I think, one of the things that that folks sometimes don't realize is that, rodents and pests in general can cause disease. They're actually public health threats. Oftentimes people, associate a mouse in the house or maybe some ants on the counter as being a nuisance. But actually, there are real threats to not only health, but also our food and our property. And so whenever we're dealing with pests, I always think it's best to call a pro and get some help. It's not a do-it-yourself project.
And let's say you can't get rid of the pests overnight. Maybe you have some immunocompromised or, relatives that you're concerned about having this level of exposure to rodents. I mean, what options can people take?
Yeah, well, it's true, because typically pest control is not going to take place overnight. It often is a process, and that process begins from the very start with protecting and preventing against these pests. And so the best defense is prevention. And so when we're thinking about rodent prevention, it's important to seal up any hole that's larger than a dime, any gap that's wider than a pencil, like a quarter inch, to keep these rodents from getting into the house in the first place. And so these particular rodents that are going to be carrying hantavirus in North America are going to be like the deer mouse and the white-footed mouse. Deer mouse is going to be in the west, the white-footed mouse is in the east, and they will typically get into places like sheds or garages. They aren't always getting into homes. That would be the house mouse, which is not a concern.
It is interesting to differentiate between the two. I know we don't always see our rodents, and sometimes there might be evidence of them in our homes or in our surrounding areas. What types of evidence markers do you look out for?
Sure. When it comes to the symptoms or the signs of a rodent infestation, the first thing that people always note are droppings. Rodents leave behind lots of evidence in the form of droppings, and they'll leave those droppings in areas that they're frequenting. Typically, rodents are going to try to stay hidden, try to stay out of sight. And once you start seeing these droppings in areas where people are frequenting or in areas out in the open, that typically is going to tell you that you have an infestation that has gotten to be pretty large. But in addition to droppings, you might also see the evidence they leave behind in terms of gnaw marks. Rodents are notorious chewers. This is both rats and mice. They will chew and chew and chew. And so that might be on food packaging. It might be on wood. They might chew to enlarge a hole where they're entering the structure. But then, and this is really terrible, but they will also chew on wires and walls and can cause fires in homes. And so it really can't stress enough that rodents are not just a nuisance.
Yeah, there's certainly a health concern, as you said. I think at the start of this stream, we talked about how summer is just around the corner, travel is ramping up. There's a lot of folks that like to take cruises around this time, and maybe they're reading this headline and they're starting to feel a little bit helpless because you get on the cruise and then you're there. You can't really do much about it. So what's your message to those folks?
Yeah, I think that the message would be to when you arrive, whether it's a cruise ship or a hotel room where it's it's a rental home at the lake, to do an inspection, to simply take a close look at your surroundings. And if you do identify that there are signs of a pest infestation, whether it's rodents or it's bed bugs or any other pest, to request to be moved, to simply be moved to a different room, to a different place. And that can go a long way towards protecting yourself and your family.
And most companies will comply if you tell them you saw a rodent and you'd like to move to a different room,
yes.
I imagine. Dr. Fredericks, thank you so much joining us with the National Pest Management Association. Any final thoughts or words before I let you go, sir?
Well, the one thing that I would encourage folks to do is to remain vigilant, to continue to keep an eye out for pests in all places. If you want to learn more about pests and how to prevent them, you can visit pestworld.org.
Thank you for watching ANF Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.